What can man do when there is a sort of anguish in existence? What can man do when he sees the temporary, when he sees the inevitable, when he sees the void? The void, the empty, the chaotic, they are a source of distress, a sort of despair, when one thinks there is more to it than what it is. We are creatures that have existed for a while, but we have become conscious of this existence fairly recently. After a sort of objective evolution of the mysterious design of creatures and legs on this planet, there came the design of a moving mind, not just a moving body. Meaningless existence, suddenly through conscious experience, meaningful existence. Now, when something has been added dimensions to in some sense have meaning, those dimensions can be taken away. And so the mystical path was in some sense not the accumulation of per se just a new dimension, but the breaking of the barriers. One is built against their actual perception. You know, Rumi has this very nice quote. He says, your task is not to seek love, but to get rid of all the barriers you have made against it. As if the intelligence is there, there is just barriers to it. Do you know? That means the existential anguish is a barrier of a choice of seeing the meaning. That means there's the Stoic statement from Epictetus. He says, we do not suffer from the events in our lives. We suffer not from the events. We suffer. We suffer. Let me see if I can remember this. We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from the judgments about them. There we go. That means existence is just existing. What are you going to do about existence? It's just there. But the experience of existence is optional. That means I can look at that tree, and then the thought of me thinking whether that tree is alive or if that tree is conscious or not, those are the added, they are the added dimension, you know? So existence is pretty meaningless, guys. Existence is just being there, but it is the movement in existence, the experience that is the spark of meaning, vision, and whatnot. You know, I found it very strange. One day I was sitting at a bus station waiting, and then it just dawned on me that people are only people when they are animate. That means if we were a bunch of statues, there would literally be no story. If we didn't, like there was this show where the characters in the show, suddenly some strange event happened and they were all kind of stuck in, like imagine everybody turned to stone, but they were stuck in a shell of stone. Do you know? And so after many years, they had this strange immortality, but every human being on earth is trapped in stone, and then they break through the stone. Do you know? There's the saying, even for snakes, that if a snake doesn't shed its skin, it dies. And it's another way of saying if you don't change in this world due to some sort of engagement, you die. And excuse me, when I say you die, I mean that it's like this. It's like the world is like a moving crowd. On some level, you want to stick to it, you got to move with the crowd. But on another level, if you don't move with the crowd moves, and then you're with yourself. So think of it this way. Everybody is in the presence of a human being, but that human being is themselves first. Sometimes I think the position of the mind is beyond a three-dimensional space, because it observes multiple three-dimensional space. That means I can look at something, right now I'm looking at something, this coffee cup in front of me. Now this is existing in three-dimensional space, okay? But if I choose to consider the fourth dimension of time, that means I literally lift up this cup and put it down, and I see there is the fourth dimension of time separating this cup. That means I lift the cup up and put it on the table. That means in two different times, the bottom of the cup hit the table. That means time is like the fourth dimension. But when I can observe, like if I do this 4 times and then I imagine 2 times I did it, do you see? So I can observe time. So the idea is that what we observe, we feel we are a higher dimension of. Okay, we feel literally we're standing in a higher dimension. That means you're like the outer layer of the onion, looking at the inner layer of the onion. The inner layer of the onion, three-dimensional. The outer layer, let's say, there's a fourth and there's a fifth. For me, beyond the fifth dimension, it's not conceivable. Language can only take us as far as the fourth dimension. Beyond the fifth dimension, it is the witnessing of the language we use to ultimately define reality. So it's like the fifth dimension is not that you are in space and time, you are from an experience outside of the existence of space and time. This world is strange because we're human beings. We think everything has to be human. People looked at the cosmos and they were like, yo, it's a person, and so there's been various angles and perceptions that has come over this life, as if every human being is masking reality with the language that they believe to be correct. You see, right now, even me speaking, I mean, on some level, I was like, what choice do I have? It's like everything I know, I know. It's like, this is how far I know. This is how far the cup has been filled for now, I think the most revolutionary thing that can happen to a human being that can transcend from a psychology that even can have despair and anguish is wonder about how the classification of the experience is there. That means it's like, I'll give you an example. There's this story, it's about frogs. It's like one of those animals have personalities kind of stories, okay? So there's these 2 frogs that have gotten stuck in this kind of ditch or hole, let's say some hole, okay? Some small hole that for frogs, it's like, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this? And so these 2 frogs in Frogville, let's say a town of frogs, Frogville, in Frog City. In this town, let us say, there's this hole and 2 frogs have fallen in it, and all the townspeople, they're a bit savage and cruel. They've all come around the circle where these 2 frogs are in, and they're all like, let's mess with these 2 frogs, and so the whole crowd, this mob mentality is around the hole where these 2 frogs are, and the 2 frogs are endlessly trying to jump out, okay? Now, as the 2 frogs are jumping out, the people begin suddenly throwing words on these frogs, as if they're like, dead frog walking, you'll never get out of that hole, you'll never achieve anything, like machine guns of negative imagery being shot at the frogs, One of the frogs eventually stops trying. That frog's like, yeah, I can't get out of this. This is fucked up. And that frog goes into the corner and just sits. And after a while, it's like it's dead. People feel that frog became so hopeless, it allowed itself to die. So that means one of the frogs stopped jumping. And then there was the frog that in some sense, but the other frog, as the crowd is more and more shouting like, yo, you'll never get out, as the mob increases the hate, strangely, this other frog is getting excited. They're like, what is this? We're insulting this guy. He's getting energized and excited and happy. And so they're enslaved. They're like, all right, guys, let's amp up the insults. Let's amp up the hate. And as they're showering this frog with hate, this frog is getting so excited and happy that it suddenly jumps out of the hole. It gets so excited it jumps out of the hole. Now, all the frogs in Frog World, they're like, holy shit, he did it. They're like, yo, is this frog Neo? It's always incredible, guys. This is life. People doubt you until you're victorious. That's simply it. People doubt. It's like, how they say actions speak louder than words? Ultimately, when an action is accomplished, it changes the psychological analysis of the person. But anyways, so that frog jumps out and they're like, holy shit, how did this frog jump out? And the moral of the story is actually that frog was deaf. That frog was deaf, so he couldn't tell what the frogs outside of the hole were saying, so he thought the frogs were cheering him on, right? So sometimes your world can be cruel, but it doesn't mean you should be, Sometimes in life, it is better to let the mind of people change. You can imagine two enemies at some point in time. Those two enemies want to destroy each other. Now, those two enemies, let's say 10 years from now, they suddenly become best friends. For me, there was I attended school in Iran for 3 years, and it was Tehran International School, pretty much a school of frustrated children who've come to Iran who they can't read and write Farsi, so they got to go to an English Swiss-based IB-based school, So that school was a battlefield. You don't know how many fights I got into. I got in that school. It was literally like normal. It's like if there wasn't fighting in that school, something was off. That'd be a weird day. It would be like, okay, maybe aliens are above the school or something. Like why aren't people fighting? And I can tell you that when you fear something, you let yourself get dominated by a will that's outside of you. It's all interpretation, guys. It's all interpretation. And it's all perspective, really. And this existential anguish I speak about, let me tell you what I think when I feel this existential anguish arises. It arises when the person feels they can't change, either in time or they haven't changed, or it's the anguish of feeling you missed something important. And for me, I feel like it's kind of like, let me tell you, there's this poet named Hafez. He says, the words you speak become the reality, become the world you live in. The words you speak become, sorry, what was the quote? The words you speak become the house you live in. What he meant is that you are setting your psychology in motion. Now, you can set it in motion in a weak way or in a strong way. Imagine you opened your eyes and you were suddenly a king. back in the day, you were like, holy shit, am I a kid right now? You know? You know? Imagine you opened your eyes as a king and you were sitting on a throne and the kingdom was the best kingdom, imagine. Imagine it was the most advanced kingdom. And imagine then you realized that in some sense, in a state of peaceful, efficient advancement, there is no leadership. You see, leadership is only required when there is something needs leading. That means it's like you don't go to the doctor when you're not sick. Do you know what I mean? So not sick is the natural one. So I feel technically the world doesn't necessarily need leaders. It needs human beings it needs temporary leaders. Do you know what I mean? It needs participants. That means it's like the person sitting down one day, getting a pen, getting a piece of paper, and being like, okay, let me see what the spectrum is. My eyes are open, there's a world. What is the edge? What are the dimensions that this reality is in? I did this for myself, and I came to a conclusion that there's 24 ways that there can emerge reality for the human being. That means I feel I've designed a system where I can see 24 combinations. I feel human psychology is existing in 24 dimensions. And this is a bold statement, but I feel I kind of figured it out. What I did was I draw like, if you have a piece of paper in front of you, draw a giant plus sign. Okay? Draw a giant plus sign. And then at the top of one, the line, the vertical line, I want you to write complexity. I want you to write unknown, and I want you to write the known in the bottom of the plus sign. Okay? And then to the left and the right of the plus sign, I want you to write to the right, I want you to write complex, and I want you on the left of their plus sign to write simple. Okay? Do you see this thing? This plus sign is pretty much two axes of the known and the unknown, and the simple and the complex. So literally, it's all the ways that this can happen, where either the unknown is simple or the unknown is complex, or either our knowledge is simple or our knowledge is complex. Either simplicity is unknown or simplicity is known. Either complexity is unknown or complexity is known. Do you see what I mean? There's various combinations here that can happen. So I feel that any reality a human being finds himself, like right now, I feel I am simply present and I simply know. That means right now it's like I in my conscious waking state, it's a state of known. Okay? It's a state of knowledge. So when I have a dream, that's a dream state. So that would be, if it's a simple dream, it would be an unknown simplicity. Or if it's a complex dream, it would be an unknown complexity. But it will be unknown. So that's the thing that I realize we're all trying to be, confident and be ourselves and be these kind of like efficient creatures, but not realizing that it's a cycle, it's a process. So the biggest realization I got about this world was that it's a living process. It's the inseparability of individual activity and cosmic activity. Are you not, tell me, dear listener, are you right now not a part of this cosmos? You see, you are occurring where reality is occurring. And Albert Einstein says that we created time so everything doesn't happen at once. That means the inner realms. Time is an experiential truth. Okay? Time is an experiential truth. But space is an existential truth. And on some level, it's like we're on a sphere. We are 8 billion creatures on a sphere in a vacuum, and really, where is up and down? The directions are self-imposed. That means just like when you look at it, like you know what it is, guys. It's like looking at the educational system, and it's like before looking at the concept of education, like before looking at a school, the person's looking at the sky. And what does the person notice? He's like, wait a minute. I can't measure the sky. The sky is endless. So, what knowledge are human beings really seeking? Do you know? It's like the universe is so vast. I was thinking, what is the plan? Are we designed as creatures to overpopulate the whole existence? Do you know? Whole universal landscape? Like after we have even become a type 3 civilization, it's It's like the person suffering because they're defining their happiness based on the positioning of phenomena. You know what I mean? That means it's like human happiness is like, I want to have this picture in this part of the wall. It's choice based. It's like when you feel you have your own choice, when you feel your free will is the divine will, then you're like, yo, like you're kind of sold by your desire, you know. But then there are times when you look at life and the questions are too majestic. The questions are like at the hour of darkness, the kings of light marching, you know. So in some sense it's the suggestion that I don't know, it's kind of like that feeling, that moment where you see it. You see it in A Lord of the Rings, the second movie, where Theoden King is in some sense like he's in Rohan. Like I don't know how many people have seen Lord of the Rings too. Probably everybody has by now. And if you haven't, you probably should. I mean, it got too many Oscars, too many Golden Globes or whatever. So I'm saying this, guys, that in Lord of the Rings 2, there is a scene where Aragorn, technically the king of Gondor, the hidden king of Gondor, Theoden, the king of Rohan, and I don't know, Gimli, like some sort of dwarf royalty, and the elf also some sort of elf royalty. So it was literally like the royals were left in the second movie, and the whole kingdom had been taken, and only the royalty was left. So like and so in that sense, it was kind of like Theoden King suddenly realizes the inevitable. He's confronting a moment of existential anguish. He's like, holy shit, there's too many bad guys outside our door, you know? And so he looks at everyone and he suddenly says, it suddenly occurs to him that, like, that this is what the human being does. Before failure, there is a backup system. That backup system in human psychology before failure is honor. That means when a person is pushed back, they are dishonored. They're dishonored, but there's still a percentage of honor in their being. Do you know? And what does Theoden King do? Theoden King says, let's ride out. Do you know? And suddenly Aragorn is like getting a flashback of Gandalf's voice. Aragorn is literally, he's like an antenna feeling Gandalf coming. Yeah. And so in that scene, Theoden King is like, we're gonna ride out. And it's messed up because they leave Gimli, they leave the dwarf, like, singing the horn, and they all ride out. So it's pretty messed up. They leave the dwarf behind. But hopefully Gandalf comes in time, you know, and like saves everybody. But the idea was that in their last stand, their response to the ultimate existential anguish of the extinction of human positioning and advancement, it was to march out honorably. It's like after some point, you're like, this whole world is like a Titanic. It's all like a sinking ship. The whole, that's what death is. Death is Titanic-like life form. You know what I mean? So we're literally jumping off the life form. And it's so in some sense, these bodies are not us. They are phases of a collective mind's coming soon preview. There was the honor of the kingdom. You see, the king was one of the first archetypes in our history as human beings where the king felt synonymous with the kingdom. That means the kings that became the guys, history, European history, you hear a lot about unenlightened kings, right? So you see a lot of tyranny in the history of royalty of this, just on this civilization. But on some level, it was pretty much human beings that tapped into a collective archetype. So the king, literally, if you go in mythology, you see the kings were like underneath the gods. So after, it's like when the gods came down to earth, they went and spoke to kings. You know what I mean? So it was like you could say if aliens wanted to interfere with human beings back in the day, they would probably interfere with the king's mind. Because the king had an identification with the collective. Do you see? The king was his kingdom. When the king, in some sense, his kingdom would get destroyed, even a single soldier die, it was as if like a cell of his body was dying. So a response to existential anguish is the honorable remembrance of the collective effort. And what is missing in our civilization is a story of humanity. And I cried, guys. I mean, not because of this. I cried when I saw this Japanese show, and that it was like intense, but the story, like, have you ever seen a show where the storyteller, you are like, just like, who wrote this, you know, who wrote it, you know? It's like you respect the directors and whatnot, the animators and the directors, but then the editors and the directors, but you on some level are like, who thought of this, right? And it was such an incredible story, and it's this Japanese narrative known as Shingeki no Kyojin, okay? And so it's pretty much after Jack and the Beanstalk, the next great, incredible, like after like, what are this thing, Gulliver's Travels or something, and then Jack and the Beanstalk, okay? This is like Shingeki no Kyojin is the next incredible giant story. And it's set in a world where humanity is under extinction, but instead of like natural disasters, instead of a meteor hitting Earth, instead of like kind of human beings killing each other, it's giants. These giants are eating human beings. Okay, so it's humanity's last resistance before its extinction against these unknown giants that kind of look humanoid and are constantly only eat humans. They don't eat animals. It's weird, right? And so in this setting, the human beings have seen such chaos. They have seen such intense chaotic reality that it is innate. Their bond with humanity, it's even the evil people, like the bad people in the story, they realize, like, against extinction, they want to win. So it's like that idea where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That means me and you are both enemies, is how what is an enemy of our civilization? And it's not really that there's enemies, but there's forces. Literally, like, do you guys know this? That the sun could literally, if the sun had a personality, it could get angry and a ridiculous solar flare could hit us. Do you know an explanation for evolution could be that there's so many waves hitting the planet, okay, and so many of these waves go beyond the observable, visible, visual frequency of perception that in some sense we cannot see it. So in some sense it's like while there's evolution happening on Earth, in an invisible parallel way, in the background, the Earth is there's collision of sounds. We think the universe is silent. Galaxies speak, but they speak through the evolution of, in some sense, all the planets that arise. That means it was like man suddenly found Gaia. Man returned to the true goddess that was the earth, the moment, the presence of the world. And it's as if when man found Earth's soul on Earth, he had a dialogue and he found the planetary voice. And he imagined that person in some sense looks at Gaia, looks at the planet and says, "Oh planet, what do you look at? I look at you, but what do you look at?" And you see the planet is silent because the answer is unfathomable. So you see, it's as if you are left to where you are unless you choose to see. And many times in my life, the blessings I found, the inner treasures that I revealed, was just because I was foolish enough to see a little bit more out of that incident. You know? There's something incredible about being a fool when you were young and then growing up and realizing that foolishness was an incredible effort, you know? Because on some level, it's like, I remember this hilarious thing. Christopher Hitchens is this militant atheist, and he's this person who pretty much feels like religion is like poison. And on some level, when religion mixes with like a political system, I agree with him. But when religion, like a guy in a forest having a religion, it doesn't harm anybody. It's only culturally maybe inefficient system because it's an ideological perspective that can't change. You see, on some level, guys, I'm saying it's not even beliefs anymore. It's just like human beings, just like they're wearing different clothes, their minds are literally programmed by different language, and that language comes to them through different phases. And really, when what people actually choose, you know, guys, I had this years ago. I had this sales job, this door-to-door sales job. It was technically like I was working for this charity, like Red Cross, but it was like a sales job, you know, seasonal thing. And in this job, I had to go door to door, and I don't know, it was strange. I later on realized it was like I would go to like 200 doors or something a day. It was ridiculous. It was like this next level amount of asking people if they want to help their community's defense systems. I realized that human beings do not make rational decisions. You can of course in certain moments rationalize, but we don't decide based on rationality. You know why? Because we have emotions. And emotions can make the experiment feel different. That means it's not just the thoughts you have that I think it's not there. It's not just the observation effect, as they say it. You know, the observer effect. You know, they say it in scientific circles. It's not just that. It's the emotional effect as well. Do you know that means it's like on a bad day, the best scientific results could look dull. On a good day, the worst scientific results could look incredible. So it's the attitude that we evoke the moment through. And so there is this notion that it's kind of like back in the day, the shamanic practice entailed a ceremonial relationship that inevitably would make the person aware of the soul of the moment. When I say the soul of the moment, that means there is two ways you can communicate as a being to this world you're in. There is one way where you're an individual object. You can communicate to this world as an individual object, or you can communicate to this world as a collective subject. The shaman, by nature, was a collective subject. Do you know what I mean? That means that's what Terence McKenna understood. That's what many, when you go look at the Native American tradition and a lot of Cherokee quotes, it's as if the nature was an extension of their human body. It wasn't just somewhere they're living in. Do you see? It was them. That's what just made me feel like it made, like, guys, it's sometimes your humanity is the common denominator. That means you could be a person with so many different ideas and culture, totally a person different, and see someone in a culture in pain, in a different culture in pain, and then you're like, what the fuck, this is happening to a human being. So you see the pain echoes. That means the moment you see the human design in pain, in inefficiency, it will bother you on some level, you know? So I'll give you an example. Imagine it's like, I'll give you an incredible sci-fi example. Imagine it's like in the way in the future, and aliens have become can get immigration on our Earth, actual extraterrestrial aliens, and we are like let's say we've made contact with an extraterrestrial species, and we've agreed that okay, members of their species kind of like can get immigration on our planet, and we can get immigration on their planet, and we came to safe terms, and let's say it was an efficient process, so it was pretty much two alien species immigrating. We were aliens to them, they were the aliens to us. So imagine right now you go to like a coffee shop, okay, and you see there's an alien ordering coffee there. And now imagine, and you see a bunch of aliens be racist to a human being, to be speciesist, speciesist, speciesism. Oh my god, guys, there's something like that should be created, guys. Racism, speciesism. Like racism, but not to a species. So you would be like, hey, aliens, what the fuck? Don't mess around with human beings on Earth. You would defend your archetype. You would defend what is real to you. This is why the world is designed in a way where you could be a person right now and completely disagree with your environment only to go see there's an environment that is in agreement with you. But at the end of it, you'll see it's just like the evolution of moments. Life is, on some sense, I felt it like this. Anytime I felt overwhelmed by this life, anytime I felt something was pushing me in a way where I couldn't retaliate, respond, or do anything about. Sometimes in life you get hit, and so you go defensive. The strategy is defensive. Like that day, anytime you're in a bad mood, like just imagine you need to bring your shield up. That means I sometimes sometimes I've had the situation where I've had a rough day, and I've had to speak to a total different crowd as a happy face. Do you know what I mean? It's like you got to be at a certain personality and energy level for the work. So, and it was as if I was in my inner realms, I was not happy, but in my outer realms, I was like, I have to defend the moment. So in some sense, like there are times where we live for the moment, and there are times the moment lives for us. Alexander the Great, in his will, he had instructed that after he dies, they put him on a boat. That was the tradition. They would put great warriors on a boat, and they would set the boat on fire, and the person was like on some sort of platform on the boat. And now, as this was doing, Alexander the Great had instructed that his arms be open. Everybody's arms are usually closed around them. He instructs his arms to be open. And people wondered why. Why was Alexander the Great's body after his death, his arms open? Why did Alexander the Great want that? And then they realized because Alexander the Great was leaving behind this ultimate message that I came here and I conquered, but I am still leaving him empty-handed. Do you see? So even you can be a conqueror, you can find a total control and navigation, you can be the captain of the ship, only to realize the ship is gonna break. So after some point, so the strategy is, while we're on this ship, we build an airplane. Right now, I can't judge myself, and I can't judge the world. Because the moment I do, I notice there can be another judgment, and there can be another judgment. And so that moment when I felt stressed or inefficient, I realized I could have endless interpretations. I could literally look at my depression from angles ad infinitum. That means from various views I could see my problem. But I'm like, wait a minute. If I can see my problem from a different view, then it's not the same problem. So what does that mean? Does that mean one problem is multiple problems for a multidimensional being? You know? And I don't know, this sense that there is anguish. I mean, sure. I mean, we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. I mean, sure, we might feel a little anguish. It's like, you kidding me? Like, it's like everything is very simulated. More than this feels like I am speaking words, it feels to me like I am simulating. I am simulating an outer extension of my inner realms. So I feel the mind is the veil of thought. The mind is the mystery. The mind is the secret. We've been looking outside only to realize the outside is happening inside. And when you truly go inside, there's no inside outside. Do you know? It's like how hilarious would it be, guys? It's like you either have to completely reverse engineer backwards, or you have to, in some sense, completely engineer forwards. You can't, like, one step reverse engineer backwards and then one step engineer forwards. Then it becomes like, no, there's no progress. So in life there are certain moments where you have to wonder about the extremes of the spectrum. Generals, they always would set up tents. They would always have some sort of headquarters. They would have some sort of base. Okay? And I feel that we should begin kind of mastering the design of an ultimate human headquarters. Okay? It's like we have not strategized well because every person's doing their own thing. You know what that means? That means civilization is like a science fair and everybody's making their own science project. And we're like, okay, great, everybody's building something different, but what would happen if everybody built the same? I have this theory that there's a technique one can use. I call it, what did I call it? The endless reverse strategy, let's say that. I had called it something else, but let's call it that for now. The endless reverse strategy. You know what that means? That means, imagine, I remember bringing up Christopher Hitchens. This was the same point I wanted to make. Christopher Hitchens is in a park. Somebody comes to him and says, "Nobody wants you here, man." Something like that. And Christopher Hitchens looks at him and says, "Who the hell are you?" And so it's that situation where when questioned, you question. When answered, you answer. You see, the world is like a chess game. Either you move first or the world moves first. If you move first, you are in the driver's seat of meaning. If the world moves first, you're in the passenger seat of meaning. Pretty much in this life, you're either feeling pulled or pushed. Tell me one moment in your life where you didn't feel you were drawn towards something, or you were like running away from something, you know? We're pushed to fear, from fear to hope, are we not? We are pushed by fear and we're pulled by hope. So we can say life is a play of forces that recently has been able to find a center of conscious gravity. You know what I mean by that is that it's like, you know how like an object, the bigger the object is, the greater the gravitational pull. Okay? What does that mean? That means the bigger the ego, the bigger the karmic pull. We cannot avoid the void. It must be confronted, and we must march into the unknown. Do not fear the unknown. The unknown is the source of the known. That means when we looked back at where we start as creatures, it's unknown to us. So much of life has passed that we cannot even, it's as if, oh my god, time space has changed so much. I don't even know if time exists anymore, guys. You know, it's like, I don't know this time anymore. When we care for the attention of the civilization, we will advance. Anytime you don't care for the direction of something, it's like you've kind of let go a car and there's a brick on the brake. You know, it's like you're like, holy shit, that system that doesn't have a direction. You know, so that means if suddenly like another ship arises in front of it, that system can't direct itself. You know, that means the biggest reason that defeat arises is because you haven't seen something that the opponent has seen. The opponent has seen further. So the battle of war back in the day, those who were victorious were those who would see further. So in the development of a new ethos for humanity, just like that Shingeki no Kyojin story where human beings of all classes, all archetypes were united because the continuity of their species was more important than their individual suffering. Because they were like, after 4 billion years, this rare light has been lit. We must march into this field. We must not conquer the landscape like savage bulldozers. We must, in some sense, learn from the world and work with it. That means, what if man suddenly realized that when he created, so when he, like, let's say, okay, here, I've had this architectural vision. I don't think it's realistically possible to do it on a mass scale, but I was thinking it's a cool idea. That imagine the sidewalks in the future, let's say in 50 years, 100 years, the sidewalks, you're walking on the sidewalk, and first of all, the sidewalks are much bigger than how you commonly see sidewalks. They're bigger than the streets, imagine. And so in the sidewalk, you're walking, and what are you noticing? You're noticing that the sidewalk is made of glass, and you look at underneath the glass of that sidewalk, and you suddenly see treetops. And you notice we are building our civilization above earth. That means man, believe it or not, even though we were born here, we're not from here. You know what I mean? That means if we were from here, we wouldn't behave so oddly against nature. You know, so there's definitely a sign, like, you know, that we don't realize we are the world. We think we're still in it. Guys, in this talk, there's a segment where I call it a quote tunnel. Excuse me. This quote tunnel is pretty much me reading quotes from a certain person in history, a bunch of their quotes, so we can get a sense of how their mind projected meaning, how their inner realms look like. That's language. That means in the future, if literally, let's say my talks echo into the future beyond my lifetime, then it would be a situation where my mind is still alive in the species through my voice or through my writings. Do you see? But the body is long gone. But the body was here only to keep the mind. I want to go into a quote tunnel of Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius he's known as a great emperor, and he pretty much like protected the Romans from the Germans and the Parthians, you know? So he was a conqueror and he was a defender, but he was also a stoic, and that's why his quotes are epic. Marcus Aurelius says, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. That's the higher luxury, guys. After you become a billionaire, you're gonna realize the next thing is you want to increase the quality of your inner realms. Marcus Aurelius says, I read that. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Yeah, to be above the act. Marcus Aurelius says, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. Marcus Aurelius says, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius says, the first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. That means, in some sense, imagine an endless energy source to your being. And then the second thing is to fearlessly explore your realm. Marcus Aurelius says, do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them if they were not yours. Wow, so he's saying everything you own as a human being, just take a moment and appreciate how you own it, because if you didn't have it, you could have had it, you could have still desired it. So you see, it's like that moment when a person is thirsty and drinks a glass of water, that's like a sacred moment equivalent to the highest prayers, where the person is like, yes. Gratefulness is an incredible, powerful force, guys. It's the greatest, one of the great healing mindsets of the realm. Do every act of your life as though it were the very last act of your life. Pretty much live like a Jedi, guys. Dwell on the beauty of life. Watch the stars and see yourself running with them. Do you know what that means? That means Marcus Aurelius had access subconscious galactic archetypes. Because, guys, the strength of, you gotta find a strength, just like how Albert Einstein says a problem cannot be solved from the same state of consciousness that created it. You can't solve a sort of complex situation with the same strength that you see that complexity. That means the strong don't see weakness. That's it. Anytime you stop seeing weakness, after some time, people in your environment are like, holy shit, is this guy strong? And then they'll realize, no, you're just not weak. You know? Marcus Aurelius says the memory of everything is very soon overwhelmed in time. That means everything that is your consciousness will be overwhelmed. Don't fear overwhelmment. Just learn to pilot through the excitement. That means chaos, it's so easy. Let me tell you why, guys. Any being in a chaotic dimension, chaos and order are inseparable. It's like they are each other's subconscious mind. They're each other's unconscious. Accept whatever comes to you, woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs. So guys, there's a view on this life where you're like, oh no, I'm suffering. Oh my God, I'm succeeding. Like, there's that kind of view. And then there's a view that is like, whoa, every moment of my life is a new moment of my life. It's like after some time, you're like, if I don't do anything, let's see what the world does. And that's where you will realize, you will see the miracle of sight. You will see the value of eyes that have endured through the space and time. You will see the value of the vision of your ancestry. You will suddenly find the honor of eons and the continuity of a species that has interstellar visions. We are not done yet. We're just beginning. We are like, imagine like right now living in Canada. You know, I can tell you, I can imagine the early settlers. And the early settlers were, in some sense, the beginning pioneers of building a civilization. And when you looked at those settlers, they looked at how far they had come from their own pioneers. Do you see? So we are always, when we look back in the past, we see progress. When we look at the future, we see the need for it. And I'm telling you, after some point, you in some sense, it's hilarious. You'll notice that things in life try to define you. Environments, the ecosystem, you know, and there's a retaliation, but you see, it's the soldier. Let me tell you, imagine a ruthless warlord, and imagine an incredible, undefeated master swordsman. Now, this ruthless, savage, egoic warlord comes to this next level master swordsman, and he looks at the master swordsman, and the warlord has the ego rush. His savageness is his skill, the warlord, right? The master, his skill is skill. Do you know that means he knows ways of eradicating his opponent's opportunities before the opponent even can attack him. Do you know what I mean? That means when you fight, if I was fighting a robot, I would have to attack the body of the robot. But after some point, if you're fighting a person, it's a game of minds. Do you see? It's a game of minds. So it's like, just like how someone can punch first, you know, in a fight, someone's mind can move first in a fight, you know? Like, you can imagine that in like the Sherlock Holmes movie where the guy was like trying to make money by like injuring people. Jesus Christ, what kind of detectives is this world creating? So your mind can move. So when you stop fearing your mind, that's when it starts moving. As long as you fear the unknown, you don't even trust anything to know anything. You know? That means you gotta find a world you can trust, you can be true in. You know? Because we only lie when we feel the world is lying to us. You don't lie around your friends, around those people you care about, your honest self. Those people who you feel they truly see you, you can't lie. Do you know? So this is like an algorithm to suffering and existential anguish, an incredible response, where you're like, Instead of me constantly seeing myself as a character being tortured by change, as an abstract fictional character, not fictional, but you know what I mean, like in your inner realm, subjective. Like instead of me constantly seeing myself as a subject that's constantly changing in accordance to the environment, let me just see what the world wants to show me. Sometimes when I see animals, guys, some animals it was like that, right? There was a situation where, guys, I'll tell you, it was one of the most divinest moments I experienced in nature. I was in the UK. I had this financial mismanagement, like I mismanaged my own finances. And what had happened was that I hadn't eaten for like a few days, and I was sitting on this kind of pond. There was this pond on this campus, and I was sitting in front of it simply, and I only had a bottle of water beside me. Do you know what I mean? And so I was just sitting there in front of the pond, and I would go very close. So I was like literally like, let's say a foot and a half away from the pond, like where I was sitting cross-legged. It was like a foot and a half away from the pond, from the water connecting to the grass. Okay, so I'm like sitting there, and it's under a tree, and I'm sitting there, just looking at the pond. Like any time when I see I can't move any further, I just watch, you know, until I see when I can move again, you know? And so I remember sitting there, guys, and I am telling you, this was the most incredible, one of the most blessed, like, incredible moments of my life. I'm sitting there, and there's a family of, like, geese that are just in the pond. They're swimming in the pond. I'm looking at the water. I'm sitting there looking at the grass. I'm looking at my body. I'm looking at even the temperature of my body. When you don't eat for a while, the temperature of the body goes down, you know? And then I also saw the temperature of my thoughts. Like, do I feel angry? Do I feel upset? And I felt preferenceless. I felt literally I was like just there in the moment. There was no value. And then I remember in that preferencelessness, I see a bird diagonally from my left, from behind my shoulder, fly above my head and literally go and fly and sit on a bench. Sit on a bench. So I literally see a bird from behind me fly, and the bird goes and literally sits on a bench. Okay? And I instantly get the thought, I want to go sit on the bench. And I go sit, the moment I get up, after like a couple steps, that family of geese, I was blocking their entrance where I was sitting. And the moment I moved, that family of geese stepped out of the pond. So the moment I just saw that bird and wanted to go sit on that bench, it fit with the symbiosis of the soul of the movement of nature. And I remember sitting on that bench, not goosebumps, they're a relief shock. A shock of relief. A shock of relief that I felt like sometimes you look at this world and you're like, hey matter, are you really matter? You know, it's like, what is this? Scientists are saying, trying to make us feel, are denying imagination, but they say 99.9% of the atom is empty. And we broke the particle, and we saw smaller particles, and we named it, and then we defined the relationships. As far as I'm concerned, language is like paint on an empty canvas, and the canvas is empty from the beginning. So emptiness is emptiness. Emptiness doesn't care about, what's in it. I'm being playful here, but I'm saying it's like emptiness doesn't care. Oh man, that's one of those statements, One of those once-in-a-lifetime sentences. Emptiness doesn't care. Emptiness doesn't care not only for imagination, but for reality too. Emptiness doesn't even care for itself, It's too empty to care. I'm just saying, guys, that we have to attempt at trying to see what our efficient self looks like before we die. That's pretty much it. You have a certain time span, and I think we have to prioritize, for now, mind activities over body activities. Okay, and the mind is an unknown dynamism, and the body is a known particle, let's say, known in particles in a particular way, even. So I'm saying, like, we don't want to forget the medical sciences, but we also don't want to forget, you know, the shamanic, uh, you can say the shaman was like the doctor of the psyche, you know? It's strange. It's like when you're younger, you are drawn to more of a physical gain or advancement. As you get older, you begin to see you are getting seated into your mind. So it's like having an ability to look at life and be like, yo, this is a simple moment. Okay. And keep walking. And then suddenly you're like, yo, this is a complex moment. Okay. Then you're like, yo, this is a known moment. Okay. This is an unknown moment. And so I'm saying you are a piloting presence of attention, uh, that the personality is a percentage of the content in your attention. You're way more than just at particles in space. You are an intelligent rhythm. You are a rhythm of, you are an eternal rhythm. We are like a temporal antenna receiving an eternal signal. And by the nature of receiving that eternal signal, the temporary can't be the temporary. Welcome to the chat section, everyone. Feel free to engage and ask questions. I might be holding a public Discord event. I was thinking, like, for, I don't know, maybe for like 2 hours, I come and see whoever's interested in these talks and wants to speak to me on Discord. It's possible. So I'm gonna give me a second. Let me find the link. So pretty much, guys, like, I'm in a situation where uh, my intuition hasn't still gone to a public stage. That means so I'm like juggling, not juggling. I feel like I'm piloting so many different projects that like literally we can imagine if, like, I was thinking if I was given a public, let's say a public talk, okay, I would, like, I've thought about this, guys. I would probably put mirrors behind me. I would make a wall of mirrors, a wall that is a complete wall filled with mirrors, you know. Guys, Kimberly in the chat section says, a smoker alike, ironic many thinkers smoke. Let me tell you, it's not thinkers that smoke. It's those who, in some level of their psychology, feel they are in the trenches. Do you know what that means? That means, like, just think about it. Back in the day, imagine you're in the trenches, and when you're in the trenches, you're like, holy shit, I could literally go up this hill, go up this, like, trench, and die. So the person wouldn't care about, for example, smoking. If you know, so those people smoke in some sense, I feel, on some level, who they feel they are in combat, in their, not in combat, but in their inner realms, there's a bigger thing going on. It's like, you know, um, it's like a bigger event is allowing a smaller event to take place, right? And also there is a chemical reasoning too. So it's not just thinkers that smoke. Smoking is, I don't know, it's a weird thing. It's kind of like the gum that attaches on your shoe, and then you're like, holy shit, I gotta throw away my shoe. You know, it's not like you can't get rid of the gum, so you gotta throw away the shoe. You know. So anyways, guys, here's the link that I was talking about for the public Discord event that may take place sometime, maybe this week or maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Like, so this is a community where anybody who cares to contribute to my efforts, I'm accessible. Pretty much, Patreon is connected to my phone. So this is like, I kind of see it as like, I don't know, the first attempt at trying to build the School of Athens 2.0. Yeah. Let me tell you something incredible, guys, that came to my attention right now. You see, what I have experienced the psychology of religion. And you know, it's kind of strange, but on some hilarious way, it's like the universe is throwing children all over the planet. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you're just thrown, like, imagine like you were like in a metal capsule and you were just landed on some planet, okay? And you just came out of that capsule, and so you're like, that's where your starting point is. I noticed that ethnocentrism means, in some sense, that what your inner realms are more important to you than your outer realms. Anytime your inner realms are more important to you than your outer realms, you can justify violence. Do you know? So that means our inner realms, Mr. Within wants human beings to reach a point where your inner realm is like this advanced, your mind is like a sword and shield. It's like an invisible sword and shield, but you never need to use it. Use it in a sharp way. That means I've been kind of like I can blame myself for being existing in certain moments where I couldn't control my not I couldn't control my anger. Like I tend to not have a disposition that feels angry is a way to live. But I'm just saying, like, there's certain moments where I've something intense has happened, and my retaliation to it was sharp. That means, like, I notice it's like, don't. I'll tell you guys, you know, it's like when you whatever your mind's been engaged with, you're in the spirit of that skill, I feel. We are dying to live, and we are living to die. We are attempting various human activities on this earth, but what are the values of those activities? And I think most activities of human beings are with themselves. That means it's like you are an activity before you even do an activity. Like that's the whole point of the biological system. Okay, it's like that's one thing we can. I'm kind of glad we have bodies as beings. That there's a sort of creaturehood, because this creaturehood is the perfect um, center to begin drawing lines of new dimensions. So you don't know. It's like some of those people who think they have to get rid of an ego to escape a materialistic illusion. That is foolishness. It's not foolishness. It's like they got afraid. They saw a little bit of the picture and got afraid. Because when somebody gets afraid, they're being cornered. And when they're being cornered, they are in some sense being broken. So you can say that moment where any human being, their psychology is disturbed. Or let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say there is like an animal, let's say there is a rabbit walking, and some messed up person okay, let's say a stronger animal. A rabbit's gonna be too harsh. Let's say like this wolf in which these messed up human beings kind of closed its jaw. Imagine one of those human beings kicks that wolf. Okay? Now that animal, its psychology is going to be disturbed by that. That means you can't push someone and expect them to have the same kind of day as they felt they were meant to. So the one act is to get rid of the unnecessary interference. Because when you really look at it, it's not that we should all get along. That would be the most unnatural, artificial thing. It's just that we have to kind of realize that it's no longer a relationship between physical bodies that is the requirement of the survival of the species. It is the efficient relationship of minds. We have to build a civilization where we feel free. If we feel free, if things were in a singular dimension or if they were multidimensional. We have to be comfortable with individuals, and we have to also be aware that individuals are developing multidimensional processes. Like language is a technology that is multidimensional. Go open a dictionary and look at a word. That word has multiple meanings, and you'll be like, excuse my language, but on some level you're like, what the fuck, You're like, you just look at it and you're like, okay, that means the word doesn't have a meaning. It's used. These are the ways people have seen meaning in the word so far. We must all explore our inner realms and, like hunter-gatherers, bring it back to the global community. You look at the void and you see nothing there, and so you cannot see a character and a story to nothing. Your mind realizes you cannot even fear your fear. It doesn't exist. Non-existence, how can we fear it when it does nothing exists to fear it? That means there is in some sense an existential dismissal, but not an experiential dismissal. There will be an experiential journey. That means your eyes, your body, your physical body is in the eyes of your mind. It's a part of your mind. Your physical existence is a part of your unknown being. Oh my God. Sometimes you gotta stretch time and space, guys. Sometimes you gotta stretch time and the world is a vending machine of shapes, a vending machine of beliefs. And the coin that you put into this vending machine is your attention. And attention is more valuable than any monetary gain. After some point, you look at civilization and you're like, okay, this is way more bigger than me. And then you suddenly find the humility to look at a world that advances, not just the self that advances. Anytime your self advances, if your self is only based on your inner realms, you don't even care about the world. It's as if you're a scavenger. It's as if you're like a savage beast that's come out of their cave in the morning just to take, and then go back. So that's inefficient and on the long term. It may be efficient short term. That means when you look at it, crime is it's strange. It's like crime is way more when living conditions are messed up. When the person hasn't eaten, do you know what that does to your psychology? When the person is in a messed up environment, like imagine your child going to school and like some of these rappers in the projects, imagine your child going to school and you suddenly hear gunshots. You're just walking around, you see a squirrel, you see something, then you hear gunshots. Like, can you imagine that? That will interfere with your psychology. That will push how you get alarmed in this life sets your alertness in motion. And so really attention can move, it can become a rhythm. That means just like how a substance can become solid, be in a solid state, liquid state, gas state, I am telling you, our minds are a higher dimensional substance that is it can be like that. There's moments where I can just see pure matter. There's moments where I can just see that it's 50%. I feel like a material being. 50% I feel an immaterial phenomenon is moving the material being. And so there's also times where I have felt, it does not often, but sometimes I have felt completely like the gas state, where I have reached a point where the concept of a body doesn't exist anymore. Therefore, your whole moment becomes your mind. Is your whole sight. So you become literally a moment. Language, you're watching language from the depths of your being. So what it is that you can pick up an object in your hand and look at it from different angles. Now we've reached a point where we can, Mr. Within is saying, you can, any subject, any idea, any concept, any image, any shape, any design, you can pick it up and look at it from different angles. Right now you can get a piece of paper and a pen and literally write the question, who am I, and give an answer, and then write the question again, who am I, and then give another answer, give another answer, give another answer, and you realize what you really are to yourself is what you have seen so far of yourself. But the potential is unknown, And life is strange. That means it's like I could totally see karma being a self-generation. That means your karma is literally your attitude being the driver of your meaning of your world. That means people don't just want to, like, even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Let me find this picture for you. So, guys, anybody who's still tuned to this, I want you to look at this chart that I just placed. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and Maslow is like, this is his theory of how human behavior is occurring in society. And he's saying that we have physiological needs. In some sense, we need to breathe properly, have good food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion, just we need to maintain our objective survival. So pretty much just think of your body as a program, and you're the captain of this ship, you're the programmer. So you choose how this body will function in the space-time continuum. So that's your physiological needs. Let's say you got that down. Then you go to safety needs. Then you go to your safety needs and you have security of body, employment, resources, morality, the family, health, and property. So after you have in some sense made your physical, biological body a sort of, you got that in check, you've gotten that, how would I say it? Okay, think of it like you're a pilot. You're piloting your attention, and you pilot your attention physiologically. So you take care of your body. That includes even in here, I think homeostasis, even your temperature. You know. So then in safety, let's say you conquered that even. Let me see what other analogy I can find. Yeah, let's say you are a human being, you're alive, and you're like, I want to climb these levels. And it's like external, physical, in front of my eyes. Life is like I'm a video game character in it, but when I close my eyes, I'm like the person behind the screen. I'm the witness behind the screen of perception and sensory perception. So after, as a human being, you've climbed higher on this mountain, and you have the dimension of security in some sense check. You have become, you found control and ability in there. So what does that mean? That means you're safe. So once you're physiologically you're complete and your safety is complete, then you go towards the relationships of the mind. I want you to imagine this, guys. The bottom of this pyramid, I don't know if Maslow commented on this, but this is Mr. Within's commentary on Maslow's hierarchy. You see I think what Maslow meant is that you see the bottom of this triangle, it is in some sense, you are more an objective being. Okay? You are a physical being. So the first thing you gotta attend to the physical needs. Then you go to your safety needs. So it's like once the body is in check, then you become aware of the mind, then you get your mind in check. So when you feel safe, you feel in control. So it's like the main challenge is for people to get to a state of safety. And then once they're in a state of safety, then it becomes more love and belonging. You see, when you go higher, it's esteem, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. Self-actualization, the top of this triangle of this diagram is literally mental achievements. The bottom is objective achievements. The higher up you go, the more it's like the truth of the subject, right? So after let's say you physically are healthy, then you got like your business and everything going on, and you're like financially safe, let's say even. You are safe in many dimensions. You've got your base, you've got your headquarters, Then the general has his tent before the war, and so love, and then you go to love and belonging. So then you go into a state where you're like, okay, I'm not just an object here, I'm a subject, and I'm a subject that my involvement with my species can animate me. So that means people get into relationships because when they're around that person, they are more than they are just themselves. Do you see? That means the lioness would always remind the lion why the crown is there, why the roar exists. So anyways, after the physiological needs, after the safety needs, after, let's say, friendship, family, and even sexual intimacy, then you go to esteem. And when esteem means how other minds see you and how you see yourself as a mind, that's self-esteem, guys. All those people, they were like, yo, what am I doing wrong? And the person in the movie or whatever was like, yo, be yourself, kid. Just be yourself. And the kid's like, what does that mean? Am I not already being myself? And what that means is that means look at it yourself. Do not wait for an ideological savior. Because ideas come and go. That's the privilege of existing as an individual. Get a taste of your independence and you become an explorer of all realms of your perception. So that's the esteem, self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, and respected by others. You know what this means? That means first you want your body to be okay, then your body to be safe, then your body to be respected, then you want your mind to be acknowledged and your mind respected, then you in some sense go to self-actualization, where it says morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, and acceptance of facts, and that's an incredibly terrible definition. I mean, it's not a terrible definition. In all those words that it's written on self, is underneath self-actualization, in all those, there is the free will's involvement. Your morality is based on your free will. Your creativity is based on what kind of brush you pick up. Your spontaneity is based on how you open your eyes. Problem solving is based on how you see the problem. You know what I mean? How you see the blueprint of the problem. Lack of prejudice and acceptance of facts. Lack of prejudice, you realize there's more than your inner realms. Acceptance of facts, you realize the outer realms have a value. But I'm saying self-actualization, this is Mr. Within's view, okay? Guys, imagine this same triangle, an inverted triangle. You see where all these words are written? Imagine there was an inverted triangle, same triangle but inverted, connected to it. So you will realize the individual self-actualization is actually the collective's physiological evolution. I am telling you, Mr. Within is saying Maslow didn't realize how incredible of a thing he had created. It is not a pyramid. It is endless pyramids connected, which they are no longer a pyramid. They are the sticker of a dimension. They are the strip of a dimension. So you kind of find that in certain inner realms. You see, like there is an outer realm multidimensionality where science is pretty much driving that ship. And there's an inner realm multidimensionality which is evocational and in accordance to every person's experience. So it's like every pilot can pilot an airplane, but they can't pilot it in the same way. All of them have different microsecond shifts in their timing and what they do and how they do it. So you see, on some level, it's like the same act, but a different actor. And every day, it's like the same act of human living, but a different context to the activity. A different way we have been set into motion for the day. It's as if when I wake up, my soul is like, all right, I'm going to throw the mind like a bowling ball in matter, and you go and live the day and see what happens. You don't fear the stage of manifestation. So don't fear existence, because when you fear it, you you are technically defeated. Any person who you let fear linger more than too long, you either feel you have to leave or you feel you have to engage. And no human being should fear effort. That means when you realize on some level, forget the psychology of human beings, it's just energetic activity, is it not? We're literally like packages of energy in motion. The mind is delivering different energetic constitutions. So for me, the extraterrestrial is not an alien being. For me, the extraterrestrial is how there is in one sort of world levels. For me, it is strange that the light beam can go into a prism and become the color spectrum. So the prism is the simultaneity of the multidimensional and the singular. we're just going to realize we're way more multidimensional than our beliefs can ever tell us. You know, we look at Orion, and we see those 3 stars, and we see the pyramids, and we're like, yo, the Egyptians were galactically creative. You know, for me, Egyptian art is like those dudes looked at the sky and they had ideas on the sky. Like that is an advanced civilization to me. Even though they were like maybe like they didn't look advanced, but maybe their vision was advanced. Self-actualization is pretty much Maslow's saying, like, that's what you do in emptiness. You are something, and you are something in a process, in a dynamic system, and you're kind of like, your mind is like a pilot, and the manifest world and everything in your awareness is like your plane of existence. So when I say we are pilots of consciousness, I am simply saying that we are attention that shifts the context of the world to the concept. So there is ways where your mind can move quicker than the body, and your mind is moving quicker than the body, and it's kind of like, because if atoms were moving quicker than thoughts, it would in some sense be a situation where there would be like, it's like, if I couldn't stand on this world if the atoms of the ground were constantly like moving and there were strange shifts. You know, that means like you can't stand long on ice when the snow is melting. I want to share with you guys a story that it's this there's this book I'm writing. It's pretty much the big update. I wanted to leave it that for the end, but I've decided to, like, I'm gonna still give the talks, but I'm gonna commit a lot of time to writing this book, guys, which I think is gonna start my career, and I'm gonna go out in the world and talk about it pretty much. Anyways, guys, so pretty much I just wanted to show you this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, that's too small to see, so. Guys, I think the Eiffel Tower is like better to watch. Anyways. So guys, I'm just saying, look at this tower. These dudes made this back in the day, and it's still around. By the way, guys, I just remembered in the subtitle I've written future elemental units, couple talks I've attempted to talk about this. I just have to paint this picture properly, then I can move on from it. You know, if someone asks me, Mr. Within, um, in what archetype does your mind dwell often? Like if your soul was a bird, on what branch does it sit on often? And I would say, I think my, like, just ever since my childhood, I was fascinated by design. And so I consider myself in any engagement to look at it as a designer first. And a designer doesn't see morality. That means before you see the design of your subjective realms, you look at the design of your objective realms. You look at your body, you look at the mirror, you look at the coffee cup, you look at the screen of your computer, you look at your phone, you know, you look at the airplane mode of your phone, you set your phone on airplane mode, you know. And then you in some sense realize it's just the navigation of attention. That means just, this is the most ultimate meditation in the world, guys. Go make a cup of tea for yourself. Go find a nice couch or some nice chair. It's better to be a solo, like, couch chair, okay? Go sit somewhere comfortable, okay? Or it could be anywhere. Just go sit somewhere comfortable with a cup of tea. And for a second, think as if you are like a psychologist and you wanted to, in some sense, diagnose the psychology of everything that is happening in your awareness. You were in a silent moment with yourself and you're like, I'm a creature, I've lived, let me see what I am. So in some sense you are commanding your mind to open itself as a gift. And that command comes from a service to its value. So there's this saying that says you must serve before you can command. What it means is you have to endure through all levels of the system to then come to the top of the system, then to realize that when you look at it from the top, there is no top. When you look at it from the bottom, there is no bottom. Like when you're at the bottom, you can't fail anymore. When you're at the top, you can't succeed anymore. You see, it's as if it's kind of, we're constantly pulled to the middle ground. So the strategy for a global advancement of civilization would require human beings to first strengthen the middle class. The middle class of all societies is the most important class. That means if it was a Titanic, the middle class needs to get on the boat first. Let me tell you why. Because the lower class and the lower class and the higher class, they have a sort of dominator and submissive kind of modality in place. That means the lower class feels it's being kind of pushed around by the higher class feels it's like it can play with the lower class. You know what I mean? And the middle class is like, why guys, please stop fighting, I'm getting crushed in the middle. You see, so we have to kind of realize that ultimately what will happen is that this is the pattern, guys. It's basic game theory. It's like you looking at the lower class and you looking at the middle class and you looking at the higher class, okay? Just imagine this is the basic way we're dividing up the economical and social and just pretty much different classes of human beings, okay? So I'm saying the lower class, middle class, higher class, what is the strategy? What is the strategy? You look at the person in the lower class, guys, trust me, I have experienced moments where I have been humbled by life in ways where it was as if the moment, after some point, it's like what's in your attention becomes you. You know, it's like even though a person enters an environment and may momentarily feel they are that environment, but you're never your environment. You're always what's moving on from it. So anyways, the lower class, technically this is the pattern we see in history. The middle class and the lower class have, again, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the lower class and the middle class are like, what the fuck? The higher class has more than us? And the lower class is savage because the lower class doesn't trust the middle class. The lower class looks at the middle class and he's like, hey, you guys don't care about us, the lower class. Anyways, the middle class doesn't care about the lower class. You know, the middle class shouts at the lower class to get off its lawn. You know what I mean? The higher class shouts at the middle class to get to work on time. You know what I mean? So the lower and the middle tend to fight the higher, but when the middle came into power, the middle didn't trust the lower, so the middle became the higher. So unless the lower class and the middle class unite and they become the same, equal in value, that means we destroy the lower class. And so it's either we reduce, it's pretty much I'm saying the higher class is behind walls, the lower and middle class are fighting. Okay, so the lower class can't blame the higher class because it doesn't have access to the higher class, so it blames the middle class who are working for the higher class. So the higher class are pretty much in their kingdom, the middle class is defending the higher class because the higher class is keeping the middle class alive. Do you see what I mean? So the strategy is that if we choose in our lifetime to experience the ultimate efficiency of human economics and human civilization and societal living, we have to merge the dimensions. And what does that mean? That means the lower class and the middle class, if they stop fighting, the higher class has to begin standing up for itself. When the higher class stands up for itself, it's technically a giant that wants to push, like wants to slap a wind in the breeze. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, so it's a. Sorry guys, I just saw a leaf fly outside my window and it got meshed into the talk, yeah. Slapping a flying leaf. That requires skill, guys. So the lower class and the middle class must be united, and the higher class and that united lower class, let's call it ULM, the unite, because the lower class has to choose the unity. The lower class is the reason tyrants are born, because the lower class doesn't realize when to put down its sword. It just wants to get out, so it's this savage, endless effort without recognition of what the efficient movement is, right? Sometimes, anyways, so when the lower class and the middle emerge, then it's no longer there is a higher class. There is just lower class, higher class. There's no middle class, you know? And so that lower class and higher class then makes it as if, you know how they say divide and conquer? We saw a system that was divided and we united a section of it, so the system is technically being conquered less. Now, in some sense, there needs to be a negotiation between resource allocation in regards to the lower dimension and the higher dimension. And really how that happens is technology is like the ultimate, is you know what it is? It's like two people negotiating at the table, and they can't come into an agreement, and the life of everything depends on it. And then at some point the table gets up and starts talking and says, guys, you know, there's something bigger than both of you, and that's me. You know, and the table the table becomes animated and forces the higher class and the lower class, you know, to some degree, sign papers on the floor. In some sense, what I mean is that novelty is the unity. We're not uniting to look like each other. We're uniting to see what the most advanced, dynamic, efficient vision of the human being would be like. The world has a voice, but its voice doesn't speak a language of concepts and subjects. It's the language of eyes. So pretty much how all human sight and attention is moving on Earth is how the Earth is speaking. That means I'm pretty sure there's extraterrestrial like observers out there, probably. It's a coin flip, really, ideology. Either there is aliens or there isn't. It's a coin flip idea, but it's like you just see like maybe there's some aliens. They're like, let me just see what these creatures are doing. You know. There's certain schools of thought that in our future we are an evolved collective being beyond time. Because we're beyond time, we are technically our own guardian angels of all the ways that our mind has climbed a mountain. So I've had experience of memories where I'm literally like in a coffee shop and I'm just remembering a time where, for example, my mind playfully, I say remember, but I'm saying it playfully. I mean, like I'm sitting in a coffee shop drinking a coffee, and then my mind just imagines like suddenly can instantly see. My mind has always been the space for my free will. And I don't know how to say it, and for the longest time, I had been I was under the spell of a world that thought it knew what it was doing. Enchanted no more, I found myself in a non-ideological state of being. In that non-ideological state of being, I got supremely shocked. I got supremely shocked how it's as if a person never speaks, nobody knows who they are. Have you noticed that? If you don't put an effort to be, to exist, you technically don't exist. We have to find a courage that the courage of the future generations now. I really feel our brains are antennas, but they also express their own signals and we receive their own signals. So imagine a satellite giving out a signal and that signal coming back and it receiving it. I honestly feel our breathing is a sort of psychological scanning and reconstitution every moment. I literally feel every time we breathe, we are reaccessing. It's like with the inhale, your inner realms have image. With the exhale, you're out of that room. Or people can have different relationships. There's been times where, how can I tell you guys? Like maybe I should share this. I experienced a dream where I died in the dream. And when I died in the dream, it was like this kind of just situation. It was as if like there was this shot. And that moment when I died, I noticed the body became like the outside world. You know how you see like that tree outside the window? Right? That tree, if it gets cut, you feel nothing. Right? So the moment in my dream, of course it's a dream, but I'm just saying in the dream, this was the unique imagery where my body became part of the screen of the world. So it's as if you step out of a film. It's like literally, it's like an actor after the director has said cut. That means let's end the fiction of that characterhood. That means when a director says cut, that literally means the actor can end the acting. And method acting, guys, I don't know. I think it's animalistic. It's like I understand Marlon Brando's genius. Like when Marlon Brando, in some sense, was offered the Godfather role, Francis Ford Coppola it's like Marlon Brando put like a tissue under his lip and He waxed with shoe polish his hair in front of the mirror to see if he can create the character of the Godfather. And he started living pretty much like a gangster, you know? So Marlon Brando, whether he liked it or not, for the sake of work, had to, because he was a method actor, literally became a gangster. So I wouldn't be surprised if Marlon Brando actually, like, for his role, spoke to gangsters. You know what I mean? To mafia or whatever. But cultural games should not overpower the humanized vision. The vision is the advancement of technology, and all minds are a contribution. So violence is literally the biggest loss of your future. Those human beings who are violent, you are losing in your future. You're not just hurting what's alive now. You're hurting what's, like, the World War II, it was like, I don't know, like, what is it, 80 million people, 75 million people died in World War II. Guys, take that in. 75 million people died. Do you see what violence does? The stupidest thing. Violence is so dumb. It's so dumb. It's literally, I'm sorry to say it. I mean, of course, a ruthless tyrant dictator in a country would be like, that's not, violence isn't dumb, man. It's a strategy. You know, I'd be like, no, it's stupid. It's stupid in the long term. Because those 75 million people who died at war, how many of them were geniuses our history was waiting for? Do you see? Our external violence is the disturbance of our inner potential. So we have to strangely, in the outer realms, aim utopic, but in the inner realms, try to find a way where it's no longer violent physically, but we are kind of like, so we keep the warrior culture alive, but in our intellects. So people intellectually should challenge each other all the time. They should be playful. That means back in the day, not even back in the day, imagine these martial art movies you see, okay? You see in the martial art movie, there's different masters with different weapons and different techniques. So I want to see a warrior class, a warrior skill based class of human beings, where we're not physically warriors, our minds are sharp and they engage. Do you know what I mean? But they are not violent, because violence is literally like, yeah, baby, keep crying. You know what I mean? That means technically it's like a violent person is someone who their inner child got hit a bit too hard and they couldn't forgive the world. That's really what violence is. Intentional violence. Because it's unnecessary. You realize, just advance the system. The cells in your body, like literally, they have to join together to heal you. Okay, and so guess what? How do you heal a civilization? No longer each person trying to be a god of their own inner realms. Now we are trying to bypass extinction. That is, for me, the game. That is the game to play. Now, I don't know what like, for example, any person in some power position in this world, I don't know what you're doing. The game is the future. And it's nice to forget the past, and it's like cuddly and super spiritual to be in the present, but at the same time, it is the future where excitement lives, where adventure lives, where the archetypes of a more advanced humanity live. So what I'm saying is, we literally have to design heaven and earth. We have to we have to pull out heaven from the center of the earth, from the center of how we have come as a concept in this realm. For as much as it's considered, I was like, what is this? You telling me I'm a biological being, but only when light is in my eyes I'm aware of it? What is this charade? You know, what is this game of elemental positioning? Who am I? And when I asked, who am I? That was like the soul roaring, as if you suddenly, the soul, it's like, let me tell you, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this incredible metaphoric structure where the archaic view of the body, mind, soul, okay, the body, mind, soul, this is like for like right now in 2020, we can say this is old school metaphysics, okay? Traditional metaphysics, I identify as body, mind, soul, pretty much. Okay? Who knew metaphysics can update? Metaphysical theories can update. You experience the winds of evolution. This is this most significant moment in the life of an advanced communicator. It is the beginning of it. An advanced communicator is not someone who just speaks. An advanced communicator is any human being who realizes they are an advanced communication of the universal sector. That means they are gifted by synchronistic, let's say, hopes that by synchronistic kind of seeds planted in the subconscious, they evoke to certain archetypes. So I want you to think of your mind as this ultimate weapon generator. There's this incredible Japanese show, again another one I'll tell you. It's called Darwin's Game, and pretty much there's a character that his skill is that he can, anytime he's in battle, the moment he just intends it, he wills it, a weapon just animates in his hand, any weapon he wants. So the mind is like that in any situation you find yourself in the conscious waking state, if you just a tiny percent feel prepared, that echoes in the whole simulation. That means nature knows what it's doing, whether you do or not. And when you have that trust of the inner realms, then it's like you don't even have imagination at that point. Reality and imagination are like children in awe of an airplane in the sky that is beyond their conceptual grasp. You must find yourself as a designer, and that whatever you interpret, whether it's anguish or if it's the Pure Lands, whatever you envision, you will realize you're left with how your attention moves next. And the greatest skill, the first skill that every human being needs to achieve is contentment with existence. Your experience has to feel like it's okay existing. Then skill can arise. So any person who thinks or still animates or entertains the notion that they are stressed, depressed, you have to prioritize the inefficient over the efficient. That means in every moment you have looked down on yourself, you could have looked up. It's just the opportunity cost. In every moment when I look back at my memories, do you know, I can create endless regret. I could think like, oh my God, why did I hold the spoon in my right hand and the fork in my left hand? I could have held the spoon in my left hand and my fork in the right hand. Why? Why did I listen to the status quo? And then you see, you can create endless regret of your past. The past is literally like a toolbox. I return to the past, mainly in these talks, that in the sense that I want to see what other patterns were there before I was. That's why history is nice. That's why if you're a person who your child wants to be a historian, I will recommend introduce mysticism to that child, because one day they're going to see history was a dream. You know, guys, I was so inspired by Martin Luther King's speech that I realized each human being carries within them something that could help the civilization. And it is job of the human being to manage that. And right now, it's fascinating because we're going towards a digital age, and we are right now pioneering the cyberspace culture. That means this lifetime of mine has been the most incredible pioneering stage. Right now, we are experiencing a moment where our attention is not completely away from nature, natural phenomena. Imagine like this situation where you're in a family and your, for example, daughter, let's say you're a father in a future family and daughter, like let's say you're a father and your young daughter comes and says, I want a tattoo. You know, and you shout at your daughter, respect your skin. You know what I mean? And not that it's something. The father feels it's unnecessary. That's why the father's saying don't do it, right? So the father's like saying don't do it. And imagine the daughter goes and gets a tattoo. Then we see, kinda in the future, the same sort of situation. The daughter's like, Dad, I want to become a robot. And the father's like, excuse me? No, daughter, you can't become a robot. And the father's like, all my friends at school are robots. Why can I not be a robot? You know, and you're like, no, daughter, you can't. You know, don't do it. And then imagine one day you come to your horror and you see that daughter. Your daughter is a robot. An android comes in. And you're like, no way, no way, no way. And then your real daughter comes in and you're like, thank God, you know. And your daughter's like, I love you, Dad. I didn't want to be a robot in the first place, you know. I'm just saying, the intensities change. The best advice is be playful with your subjective realms and be serious with your objective realms. You know, that's really it. And then beyond the subjective realms and the objective realms, that is the area of study. That means once you get to, oh my God, I'm going to bring back Maslow's hierarchy of needs because I'm going to tell you what the difference is. Let me just find this, guys. I'm going to tell you something interesting because I was speaking about the classes. I'm going to say it like this. You see in this, I want you to imagine this is applying to all human beings as Maslow saw it. All human beings, they need to climb this mountain of needs. Now, that means the lower class has to climb this mountain of needs, the middle class has to climb the mountain of this mountain of needs, and the higher class has to climb this mountain of needs, okay? So what does that mean? That means the lower class is still struggling with physiological needs, okay? And safety needs. The only thing the lower class wants is like that kid in the projects just wants to take their family into a safer neighborhood. You know what I mean? So it's strange that people in rough neighborhoods don't actually want to be there, and that's why they're rough places, you know? So the lower class is struggling with safety. Safety is an achievement. So if we ever wanted to help the lower class, it would be making these neighborhoods feel safe, feel like they can live, that the child doesn't have to just trap itself in the home because the streets are a dangerous place. So, you know, we have to create options. And the educational system, it's still monetized. Can you believe this? You know, I was like, the educational system should have been free before I was born. How dare people not notice this? That education is not for money. And that means the government has to, in some sense, control the educational system, right? And some people are going to be like, we can't even trust the government. And I know that so many systems are inefficient that right now suggesting collaboration means the inefficiencies and infusing. That's why there shouldn't be any sort of collaboration unless an efficient vision has been seen. You know, that means there's so many people who have business meetings, but those business meetings are being wasted because those two people can't get serious and say, hey man, what do you want? You know, it's like there's some salesmen who are like, the person comes and they're like, you know, the salesman is like, okay, let me show you this and let me show you that. And there are some salesmen who are like, what do you want? They share the idea and they're like, do you want this? If you don't want this, buy. You know what I mean? And so then the person's like, okay, I have to make my decision. This guy doesn't have to sell it to me. I have to care to see the value in things, right? And then they may buy it and they may not. Life is not a forced success. When you forcefully get success, that's disgusting. That's like raped achievement. Do you know what I mean? Like, excuse my language, but that's like you forced your success. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I remember writing this nice short story where it's called the Paper Hat King. The Paper Hat King. Sorry, not hat. Paper Crown King. I remember it. It's the script I wrote, and anybody who's who works in media and lives in Toronto, get in touch with me, and we can perhaps make this film. Do you know? Like, I can direct it. You know. So anyways, the Paper Crown King is this idea, it's the story I created where it's just showing you that if the film, you're like, what is this film about? This film is literally showing, it's at its beginning scene, how the right-hand trusted man of a king is deceiving the king, and he kills the king that was there, and he grabs the crown from the king's head. Okay? And he grabs the crown and he sits in the throne and he's throning himself. It's a Napoleon-like king. And in my short story, guys, I created such a unique element because sometimes a masterpiece is a micro change, or sometimes it's a macro change, you know, or sometimes it is just randomity's wilderness, you know. So what happened was that this guy, he kills the king. And he sits in the crown, and everybody in the council is like, all right, this guy's the new king. And this guy gets the crown, and he declares it. He gives a speech, and he's like, bow to your king. And he sits on the throne, and the moment he comes to put the crown on his head, the crown becomes made of paper. This unbreakable paper, unburnable paper. Do you know? Oh, sorry. Anytime he puts the crown on his head and lets go of his hand, the crown becomes paper. Right? The moment he touches the crown, he holds the crown, it's like it becomes a metal crown. That was the whole point of this short story I had designed. Right? So this Paper Crown King, because the whole idea was the crown could pick up on the conscience. The crown was the conscience of the king. The crown the king truly wears is not. Those kings that failed, their crown was not a metal crown. It was the conscience that was the voice of the better kingdom. That means it's like the king, the enlightened king, was like, holy shit, what would the future of the kingdom look like? The tyrant king was like, what would my future look like? Let me eat more like pastry, like the Louis kings, Oh man. So I'm saying the higher class, they don't have to worry about the esteem. They don't have to worry. They just are left in self-actualization. It was kind of like, I'm going to share this because there's some audiences in America. I've got to be honest in this time more than ever. You see, I see that, like, this is just a viewpoint, guys. I detach myself from any sort of politics because you cannot vote for tidal waves hitting one another. It's like, what are we voting for? I'm not saying we shouldn't vote, but I'm not saying I don't vote. I'm just saying that it's like the system is too blurry to make a decision. So why am I making a decision? Really, what is that? Like, if I can't understand the outcome of my decision, am I just voting for my imagination, my hopes of my imagination? You know what I mean? So that's one situation. But there was something that I think it was an important event in human civilization, and it was really pretty much I saw a debate of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Okay, and I was trying to see about the psychology, and it was this situation where I was looking at Donald Trump, and I'm like, this guy has climbed up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and really, when you achieve all your individual desires, then self-actualization, it's the ultimate desire, guys. Legacy is the ultimate desire. That's what the self-actualization is. That means after all physical desires you got, after you ate the best cakes and you in some sense drove the best vehicles and you in some sense had the best joyous moments, then you're like, what else? Then it becomes you wondering about how the meaning of you changes in time. So I'm telling you, the mind, we have to learn to speak the language of minds that are experiencing themselves as part of a field. I feel this is the case. It's just human beings interpreting reality based on their own value systems that arise naturally throughout time, get half-shaped throughout time. That means your style as a human being is your attitude, believe it or not, towards the moment. That's what style is. And if this is the secret that you see, that those people who go on stage understand. There's some people who look at the stage and they're like, oh no, so many people looking at me. And there's some people who are like, oh my god, a stage? You're telling me there exists a stage? The person runs to it. That means it's not that one man's trash is another man's treasure. It's that trash can be, in some sense, become. You can literally, like, what is an invention? A bunch of meaningless stuff positioned in a unique way to, in some sense, be something. I feel that we have to awaken, not to like, yo, we're not egos, let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya of oneness. No. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like that. It's like, you know how many children of billionaires there are right now who they are under the impression that the world is happiness. It's not wrong to be happy, but I feel this system is temporary. What does that mean? That means it's like you're driving this vehicle for some time and then you exit the vehicle. So I'm telling people, guys, when you wake up in the morning, are you aware that you get to drive the day once? Navigate and pilot through the day once. And then I just one day woke up and I'm like, all right, I'm going to give myself permission. I'm going to go at my own pace. That means somebody could come and say something to me, whatever. I'm not going to lose my pace. I'm going to go with the pace of my inner realms, but I'm going to be observant of the outer realms. And so what happened was that anything that would happen, anything that happens in this life, I watch what happens, I look at it, and I don't have a desire to really speak unless there is an image. There is a structure in the inner realms. That means I've had moments where I've sat somewhere silent, and for me, it didn't matter. I was so busy with my own work, like writing something, that it was like it didn't matter if there was people in the room or not. My attention was not there. You know, so your attention is your knowledge. That's what you know. It's like that flashlight in the dark forest of space and time. Whoa. You know, I close my eyes and you tell me I got imagination, and that means you could be around someone and you can imagine something and they, in some sense, could have no idea what you imagined. You see what I mean? That means imagination is like your private room. It's like nature's private policy that truth is experientially inner but existentially outer. It's one of those cool questions, those cool attempts. So for me, it's like the next Rubik's cube. How do we fix this class distinction? And guys, pretty much Marxism, communism, Eastern European ideology. You got to realize the ideas that arise in a nation on a massive scale are ideas that, in some sense, relate. That relate to the cultural program, which is the experiential activity. That means how human beings behave in an environment is in some sense suggesting what ideas are important for that environment. The human behavior is set upon ideas. So technically, when you see different people walking outside, you know, in this world, what do you see? You see different programs and different directions. It's as if everybody is driving to a different address, but we're all driving somewhere. That means an incredible statement I could say is that your breathing is in some sense how your mind is the breath of your inner realms, or your breath is your mind. Okay, let me just uh, vocalize the idea, guys. It's like your mind is your subjective heart, and its subjective heartbeat is based on the breathings, inhalation and exhalation. The mind, guys, is not an object. It's more like the sands in the beach where things are written on, and through every inhalation and exhalation, the sands are like the shores come and smoothen out the idea. So when you look at something and you close your eyes, as you keep breathing with every breath, the environment is updating. So it's like every time we breathe, we become aware of the context. And then back in the context, so we are oscillating subjectively in a psychological way between being a concept and a context by our breathing. So our physiological constitution is technically defining the edges of the paper where the mind can display intelligence. So your DNA is a unique paint, and this paint, it must somehow find its way on the canvas of civilization. That means, and hopefully you choose an efficient route, because who has time? Who has time for evil? Like the guy comes and the supervillain comes, and the person in the street's like, bro, you have time to be evil? We're dying in this society trying to get by. You have time to be evil? Like what? This guy has way too much free time. So one thing is common, guys. Too many extreme judgments on morality are from those people that have way too much free time. Because the grand work, the great work is the collective movement. Don't you want to see how 8 billion human beings can build an advanced civilization before you die? That for me is like it's like why I breathe in the morning. Just to see what could happen to this. Because I'm telling you, the inner realms are unconditional. Let's say right now you even think you're the most spiritual person and you've explored all the spiritual dimensions of reality and you've done everything and you've remembered even, let's entertain Vedic mythology to some degree. Let's say you've like been born on this earth, you remembered your divine remembrance, you access the universal memory, you return to the primordial as an inconceivable being, and then you return back to earth realizing that after you get to the inconceivable, there's no conceivability. So eternity is boring. It's not that it's boring, it's liberating, but it's that you return back to the physical realm. So first the mystic thinks the object is not divine. Then you will realize it is divine. You will realize the meaning you see in objective phenomena is how you are being the soul of that object's character. Your attention imbues life in phenomena, and you can see this literally in little children. The little child holds its teddy bear like, look at my best friend, mother, you know? And the parents are like, oh, that's cute, that's so cute, you know? And that child, what is that child doing? What would a psychologist say? That psychologist would look at the parents and would say, hey, that's not that cute, that is fascinating. Your child is literally imbuing characterhood in an object. So that child is going to grow up and see that instead of like how that child is going to see a teddy bear as its friend, it's going to see another human being as its friend. But the teddy bear, the child can't see its nature. So because we don't have each other's eyes, we technically appear as objects. So if we are animalistically savage, we would have objective desires. So human advancements must require freedom of space. So it's no longer we just need freedom of speech, and freedom of speech technically implies freedom of vision and mind. We need a freedom of space. We need efficiency. That means I was like, why am I putting my phone on my pocket? Then my mind playfully imagined in the future we have these small orbs that are like these surveillance. Everybody is like, even a young child could go in society because this orb is like this surveillance drone in the air that is protecting the child. And it's this AI like Tony Stark's Jarvis that you're like, you know, let's call it like, you call that drone Teddy and you're like, Teddy, look up like, you know, I don't know. Look up like, how can I get home or something, you know what I mean? I'm kind of like, I'm just trying to say, guys, that everything can stretch. Everything is geometrically connected to everything else. On some level, it's just geometry, you know? You fear geometry, you fear novelty. Because the way we don't, you know what the savior of the cyberspace culture, you know what the divinity of the cyberspace culture is going to be like? Imagine in 120 years from now, some child, the first child on Earth, accidentally gets caught in a virtual reality simulation, and the child can't get out. Okay? That child in that cyberspace simulation, the moment it wants to go beyond the veil would not be thought, it would be the geometric design. That means in my inner realms, I have existed as a geometrical being, pure geometrical being. And it's this strange thing. I never thought in my life I would come to a moment where I would think everything is geometry, but it's alive. So it's geometry with an unknown dynamism. Alright, guys, let's get to the cherry on the cake, and I'm gonna end this talk soon. Um, I hope everybody gets. I've just decided, guys, I'm gonna say, like, I don't know if I said it in the beginning, but just anybody who just ask questions, and at the end, I'm gonna go read them. If you have questions, of course. If you don't have questions, don't engage the chat section. But I'm saying, like, if you have questions, put MW in the front so I know that it's specifically to me, and then write these questions throughout the talk whenever they appear to you as I'm giving the talk. And then at the end, right before I end off, I'm going to attempt to I saw on this game show, there was this thing where it was speed answers. Do you know what I mean? I was thinking of just giving like speed answers to see, just like, I learned from Terence McKenna to learn to really love questions. There was a time I didn't like questions. Somebody asked me a question, I would be like, who are you? It's like, why are you here? It's like, why is the problem here? You know what I mean? So guys, this is the cherry on the cake. This is the main core thing, the subtitle where I've written future elemental units. This is Mr. Within's strategy for the continuity, for the evolution. This is Mr. Within's strategy for the advancement of the collective cultural program. So what does that mean? That means when I look at civilization, I'm kind of seeing it strangely in a sort of medical context, in the sense that I'm kind of seeing like that it's like they are cells of the same tissue. Do you see? So what I'm saying is that civilization for me is all the behavior and activity, all the activity, the hidden activity in the shadows of those societies and in the light of those societies. Civilization is the global activity. Any human being, literally, it could be someone stranded on an island and the person is building a house. That is technically part. When I say civilization, that counts. That man's effort counts. That man is choosing to keep human order alive in a place where unnatural chaos seems to be, in some sense, a sort of sunset. Guys, for me, it's just, I'm just thinking, what would the future do, and I'm just attempting to share it. So I feel that this idea of the future elemental unit. See, guys, I noticed something, and I noticed this when in my observation in life through my years of schooling, and at the same time, just pretty much just communicating with this world while I've been alive, you know. And what I've noticed is that, you know, it's kind of like strangely, people shouldn't just be valued for what they individually are. They should also be valued for what they can collectively be. And I was like, where do we see an example of this in the educational system? And I'm like, only in the X-Men movies. That means the movies got the educational system in a better way than the educational system actually exists. Do you see those X-Men? They were excited. They had a journey to go on. They had something to do. But in the educational system, the teacher comes and the teacher's like, oh God, I didn't drink enough coffee. And the students are noisy and the teacher's like, please kids, just be quiet. You know, I want this day to end, you know. And the students are like, oh shit, our teacher's sad. Let's like be quiet, you know. And you see the teacher just splashes some random paint on the wall. Not random, splashes the same painting over the wall every year, every year, every year, every year, not realizing that all those students that enter the system were meant to update the system. That means meaningless assignments are being done. The educational system doesn't know what to do with its assignments. Those assignments are being thrown in thin air. That means the educational system doesn't even know what to test the student on. It's testing it on just what it shows, what the past said. An educational system based on the past cannot see the future. The educational system should literally be like a bunker where we are finding the next great strategies as a species intellectually to see how we can comprehend the world. And really, what happens when you're when things get tight? You just add dimensions, you add space. So anytime I felt weak, the only way I could have come out of that mindset was for a second. I just stopped feeling weak for a microsecond, and then I suddenly returned to some sort of strength that was still like a breathing image in my life, you know? Our eyes are not just storytellers. They are, the storyteller is the story. The storyteller can tell itself, I'm a bad character, and go live life as a bad character. The storyteller can tell itself, I'm a good character, and live as a good character. When you realize, though, you are not even though I say I saw myself in my inner realms as a design, I, at my core, know that in some sense, the object in it's like the whole moment. My mind is not my body. My body is a percentage of observable phenomena of what the mind actually completely is. So it's like the person comes and asks, it's like, this has happened to me, guys. It happened actually when my father asked me if I perceive past lives. One day my father asked that. It was like an epic question, you know. And I told my father I can't even ask the question of past lives because I feel what I see now is it's just the tip of the iceberg of what I really am. So it's like, what's the point of seeing the past lives of just the tip of the iceberg? The iceberg is much more unfathomable. So for me, when I became content with the unknown, I was not afraid of the inconceivable. So that meant I found a way to endlessly be able to see things. And it's just by comprehending your position. That means moments where I feel like engaged or energized to speak, there are moments where I feel like it's like this is where the moment's going towards. But I'm telling you, I have lived in more silence than I have lived in words. That means like, even though I've been giving these talks about, but you know how much silence there is in human life? You know how many moments you are where you're just walking past things, you know? So many things I've walked in, like, you walk in society, and like the downtown of every country is like where it's like it's the streets where the defeated and the successful both walk those streets. So I've walked in, like, as this middle class child, kind of like looking at this situation, and I've been like, wow, like it's like I have the desire for, like, this vehicle. I have this desire for this advanced technology. I have this desire for this, all these things to have. Do you know? That means it's like some kids just wanted to be like Iron Man before they knew Iron Man existed. They just wanted to see what the new technology is like interactively. Right now, it's not being held in too much of a high light. But the word futurist, excuse me, guys, the word futurist will become the most honorable word. That means that, like, hopefully in the future, I can create some sort of institution that can give awards to certain people. I feel like any system can be updated. So, guys, um, all right, all right. So, guys, keep asking, keep sharing your questions. I just have to share this idea of the elemental unit, and then it's Q&A. Okay. So, just this elemental unit was pretty much. I'm trying to paint this picture for you that there's different psychologies. So pretty much there's 8 billion different people with 8 billion different DNA. So we are like on a microscopic level in regards to creativity and in regards to our views on the world. We're all like the X-Men. Or it's like another way of saying it, we are all like different instruments that can be mastered. So it's like your greatest life is as if you're an instrument that you're playing a master melody. It's not per se a belief system, it's just a handling. It's like a maintenance. It's like a sort of navigation. It's a sort of like endurance. Let me tell you, the mind can stand timelessly, but the body has to listen to time. Do you know? It's like time is the father of your physical body. If in some sense the soul, it's like the soul of space was married to Gaia. Do you know what I mean? Time would be the father-in-law of the soul of space. Anyways, I gotta get this idea out. Elemental unit. Let me first define it. What do I mean elemental unit? That means I have seen... Sorry guys, just a second. I pretty much, guys, throughout my years in... just pretty much in every school I've been, I've in some sense perceived like the classroom as society. So oftentimes I would sit in the classroom and look at the psychology, kind of like a like some sort of eagle in on a high branch, looking at all the other eagles in the lower in like from in the lower branch. That means silence is incredible. Silence is mystery, guys. Silence is beautiful after some point, but also so is the voice that has arisen from the dirt. Oh my god. Okay. So guys, I'm going to share something. John Pierce um, brings up an interesting question. He says, I'm saying that the attention is always present, but not omnipresent. So I'm saying if your mind right now, if somebody asks you what is your mind, and you looked around and you realize it's literally how you are aware, the full awareness through the sensory. I'm saying, how is your attention not omnipresent when your mind is not an object? It is technically how the whole awareness of your moment, is it not? So I'm telling you, your mind is like this, it's like this sphere around the body, okay? It's the sphere of conscious being. That means a great argument that could be made about consciousness is that consciousness is a range. Consciousness is not something on its own. It's a range. It's a higher dimensional interference, or it's as if we are realizing that behind our eyes, we have found the staircase to heaven. Even the guy who wrote Narnia was like, "Yo, that's deep." You telling me there's the gate of paradise is behind my eyes? Mr. Within would be like, "Hey, call it a gate of paradise, call it a portal, Stargate." Call it a veil, call it a soul, call it imagination, call it whatever you like. You'll eventually see it's like this is life. You see it, you see your eyes open in a world where certain things are known and certain things are unknown. And so I'm saying that the processing, so on some level, this intelligence is extracting sensory perception, right? So we're literally like a sponge soaking in all this sensory perception. Now, this sponge is soaking in this all sensory perception, but then it's being processed. Okay? So that means we're not just our senses, we are how our senses are sculpting our subjective life, our inner life. Do you see? So that inner life's direction is the mystery of free will that neurologists are like, what do you want me to say? The neurons could be the effect of some hidden cause of a dimension, you know? It's like the roots of the brain could be immaterial. The roots of the brain could technically exist as just a sort of just unique element. It's like now gosh guys, it's becoming hard to breathe in the madness of great ideas, you know. Greatness is why we survive. Greatness is our birthright, is our honor that has been taken away from us. It is like how in certain cultures around the world their hair would grow long and they wouldn't cut their hair. They saw the hair, for example, in certain Tibetan Buddhist traditions, there are certain practitioners, teachers, who the guy hasn't cut his hair for like 30 years and he's pretty much carrying it in a cart, you know? But then the guy felt like a time has come where and they would say anytime the master would kind of cut his hair, it was a sign that he was leaving this earth. You know. But and I saw this in the documentary, guys. The Tibetan master kind of cut his hair. He cut that 40 year, not 40 probably, but like 20-year commitment. Some people believe that like when the if you see the brain as an antenna, your hair is like. But like you can like how hilarious is it that if when Einstein's hair was messed up, imagine that was influencing his inner realms. That means Einstein was like, yo, man, my hair is an antenna, you know? Like those old school cars, you know, you kind of like, your hair is like an antenna. One concept is like, you gotta let life breathe. And that's universal, really. Just a second, guys, I need a quick break. I'll be back. Okay, guys. I'm back now. Just a comment on what I see in the chat section. Guys, what I meant by the hair is an antenna, that there's even a story where like this Native American, this military enlisted this Native American this native like tracker in the woods and whatnot. And the native tracker had long hair in their culture, and so they cut the guy's hair and he suddenly doesn't have the same intuition. So it is true that when you get changed, the way you know things also gets changed. I would like to say, just in a more simpler format, back in the day, guys, I pretty much saw, like in Vedic culture, they considered 5 elements to the world. The periodic table was much smaller. It was earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Okay? And I've been observing kind of human psychology for a while, and I thought that what if these 5 were the best balance? And what if human beings, like I understand that friendship, of course, it's something natural, but I'm saying what if human beings all around the world got into groups as a sort of basic backup strategy to human psychology's certainty of evolution, where there is, it's kind of like find a tribe where you are one of these elements for the tribe, okay? And what I mean by that, that means it's like, because that way all the elements learn from one another. Even you see, like in certain ideas, they were like become a master of the elemental realm. Even Guru Padmasambhava speaks about learning to observe the elemental dissolution. So I'm saying, like, in the future, we should create these units. Like, you kind of see it. It's like a crew. People have to go towards these elemental crews. Let's call them that. Elemental units or crews. CREWS. And so, what does that mean? That means you look at who you are now. Like, if you feel like it's about the animation of it. Like when I say back in the day, the periodic table was that wasn't just the periodic table. They thought the inner realms, all imagination, would also happen in accordance to how the elements happen. So if you think your imagination is the counter response, it's a response to reality. So if reality is made of 5 elements, that means your imagination is the response to 5 dimensions. So that means it's like your imagination, okay, it's like the brain is a prism. One light beam is entering it, a white light beam, and it's coming out as multiple light beams. Okay? And that's what I mean. That means it's like the unison. It's about psychology, guys. Psychology. If the person is not wise, they are taking for their invisible. They're taking with their invisible hand. If the person is wise, they're giving with their invisible hand. Because I'm telling you, things are so temporary that it's like one day the person who had enemies looked in the sky and said, "Wait a minute, are you telling me everybody dies on this earth?" And then you're like, wow, the world is crueler than your enemy. For me, this elemental unit is a transformation for the cultural program. And one may think, how is the mind aware of that it's a mind? Guys, it's like this. Your body is known. Your mind is semi-known in regards to subjective content, ideas, ability to remember, ability to visualize, ability to even acknowledge the problem, to even be able to find an answer. So the mind is advanced. So somehow the status quo was selling its story. Oh no, we're suffering. We can't do anything. We're going to destroy ourselves. We're going to press the wrong buttons, you know. We're going to do the wrong things. It's like, sure, of course we can do the wrong things. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of decisions here, you know. It's just that we have to care for the important. And I am telling you, nothing advances your life. If you literally, as a person, try this out, I'm telling you, you write back to me if something changes in your life or not. Literally, get a piece of paper and a pen and sit down in a moment, just seriously. No, not even too humorously or in a silly way. Just seriously sit down and be like, all right, I'm like a candle, I'm melting, I have a mind, I have an intelligence. What is important to me? Ask this from yourself and let yourself give that question an honest new answer. And you will be fascinated when you discover what is important to run towards it. That means it's like, don't think greatness is a solo journey only. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is in the light of greater greatness. That means you go ask that greatness, how are you great? The greatness, like, I'm good compared to the greatness I see that could be. You see, it's the ascension of man's mind to the infinite archetype, which means that man's ego can get as big as endlessly till the end of time. It can get bigger and bigger and bigger. In the future, let's say like 10,000 years from now, even way more from now, you know, let's say 100,000 years from now, we are like galactic creatures being like, no, this is my land, this is my galaxy, this is your galaxy. Like, imagine. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, it's like the pattern has to be observed and then something can be done about it. I feel, isn't it strange that the same way we don't know what's inside a black hole in outer space is the same way we don't know truly what is inside the sun? In my science fiction novel, I wrote the sun. Like, I've written this science fiction novel set in the year 5025. There is this organization called the Central Sun Legion, and these are like the guardians of galaxies. But they live in the suns of all solar systems, and all the suns in the solar systems are their embassies. You know, and each sun is deciding what to, like, imagine in my science fiction novel, the sunbeams are literally the marketing strategy of advanced civilizations for imbuing life in the sector, universal sector. So that means that in my science fiction novel, light is not just photons, light is a tunnel, it's a bridge. There's something is coming from the other side of the light beam. Some intention. The light beam is like the mind of it's as if, like, I remember in one of my own personal inner realm experiences, I was just standing somewhere, and in my inner realms I perceived myself as this kind of, like, it wasn't me, like, I was just in my, like, I'd closed my eyes, and I was just, when I say inner realms, that means I was like, the visualization of it was being seen at such a inner visual subjective level that it was feeling real when my eyes was closed. So I was entertaining it, just like how an actor, let's say, takes a role and method acts the role. I was for a second method acting, entertaining my inner realms. And in my inner realms, I was looking through the eyes of this kind of sort of golden version of Silver Surfer. It was like this sort of strange daydream. This golden version of this Silver Surfer, but I wasn't on this earth, I was on this hollow rock. And there was, as if I saw a tear come out of the eye of this golden Silver Surfer, and there was no surfboard, you know? Just like, and a tear came out of the eye of this golden kind of surfer kind of vision I had in my inner realms. And the guy, the golden surfer, he takes literally, as the tear is in his eyes, with the nail of his index finger, he picks up that tear from his eyelid, and he in some sense gives a command and shoots that tear like a moment of time trapped in a bottle so that people know what happened in this part of the universe. He's sending like a message in a bottle into a sea, and because he's seeing something intense that must be remembered by the galactic memory. You know, it's like, trust me, it's not just we evolve out of our archetypes, we evolve through new archetypes. That means that self-actualization on the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's like every human being realizing their full potential and realizing what they're acquainted in. So for me, like I'm telling you, you as a human being, just increase your skill. What does that mean? That means imagine you wanted to see what the most greatest version of you looks like in the moment. You were like, okay, let me see. Let me see what it looks like when I not presume, when I consider what it would look like. You see, there's a humility there that grants access to that knowing. It's like you're not doing it because of a desire. It's like they're like it's like they're like, why did you drink that glass of orange juice? Why did you listen to your desire? You're like, I just wanted to see what the experience of myself when I drink that would be. It's like I just want to see what it's like, right? That simple, very simple idea. I just want to see what it's like is really the strongest position argument for why an advanced civilization should exist. We don't know if it's going to be good. We don't know if it's going to be bad. We don't know if human beings are going to gather around to globally initiate this. But we can see at least what would it look like. So in the future, I think human psychology and psychology, group psychology, should follow this ancient model of the elements. Okay? That means if any entrepreneur out there, start building a company, start building a team. Start building a team where you have somebody who's like the fire element, somebody who is intense. Let's say, Mr. Within's just sharing his views on how somebody should start a company. Like, I'm just talking to entrepreneurs for a second here, you know? Imagine right now you are somebody who has some sort of vision, some sort of game plan, and you want to start a company. And so when you start a company, this is of course how far I've seen of the canvas. This is how far I've looked at the canvas. But like, I'll tell you this, it's like you realize that you start with a model, an initial model for how the business is going to move. Imagine your business was a living being. Okay, so you're seeing the model of how it's going to move. Okay, so realistically, what it is is that businesses, it's as if they have a vision of themselves before they've entered the market, and they will have a new vision of really the strategy when they enter the market. So the moment you actually enter the marketplace, your business becomes legitimate, then your business model is immediately under pressure to change. And you have to be conscious. So for me, it's like, to some degree, starting a business is like playing chess with a world where money, unfortunately, has to be used like energy. Do you know what I mean? That means money is like the food your business needs to eat to stay alive. You know what I mean? Like the cash flow. So I'm saying the business model changes. So you are kind of saying, all right, so my business has a life cycle. And when you look at the human life cycle, the person is going through different phases. It's like when you climb a mountain, what is at the bottom, the view from the bottom is different than from the view from the middle and the view from the top. You see, so I'm saying that you are growing with the business. So entrepreneurship is like setting sail in an unknown sea, okay? And then you keep updating, right? So let's say you want to kind of go, you want to add this Vedic spice into your business organization. Vedic mythological spice, yeah. And so what I'm saying is, sorry guys, I got interrupted for a second. So just pretty much, you're starting a business. Mr. Within is saying incorporate this elemental crew and unit idea that I've shared. That means begin to see these dimensions. For example, you can see this in an emotional way, where it's as if like when you're calm, when you're blissful, it's like the gentleness of a stream. It's like the water element. Or that moment when you're marching into battle like a warrior, you're in some sense like a general in the war. You're in some sense, it's a situation where it's like fire infused with wind, you know? Or it's like the marching is the wind, and the moment that you hit the battle, suddenly the wind element becomes the mind state becomes suddenly the fire element. Or when someone gets angry, it's as if they're burning. Their inner realms are like they haven't discriminated between their eyes and the outer world, so anything they hear from the outer world changes their eyes immediately, they get offended. You see what I mean? That means we are not our words. Our words are just fragments of how advanced and complex and mysterious our minds are. Like, I was like blown away. I was so blown away when I saw this. I saw this lecture from this atheist about free will being an illusion. And I was blown away. I'm like literally the person sitting in a room with a bunch of people there, and he's like, "You guys don't exist." And everybody's like clapping for him at the end. They're like, "Yes, yes, free will is an illusion. We don't exist." And that's the sad madness. That's the madness. That's the madness of belief. That means the issue is not the belief system. The issue is the pattern. The pattern is one thing is being exchanged for another, but the same thing is being done. Do you know? So the same way we see, for example, rebellions happen in history, and the rebels weren't better than the people they rebelled against. They became the same dictators as the dictator they rebelled against. Do you know what I mean? So it was a situation where, I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I'm just saying, like, build a team that has a good vision of the dimensions of the market you want to conquer. Do you know? And remind the team of the life cycle of the business. That means a business that people think is forever going to go on. That business it's first of all, it's weird. It's like immortality in business is a bit strange. And it should be. I don't know. I don't know how to think about that yet. But I'm just saying, like, don't ignore the changing world, where the changing self is glimpsing at. Anyways, guys, I think I shared enough about this elemental unit idea. I just want to say we can use that as a framework, as a blueprint for strategizing and trying to whether we want to start a business, whether we want to analyze our emotions, whether we want to see different styles of skill or whatnot, you know. That means the cool thing about back in the day was there were different martial arts. There wasn't one school of martial arts. There were various different techniques and methods of fighting. For example, in Aikido, the person would use the momentum of turning. Do you know what I mean? So, like, it's like, do you know what I mean? A sort of centrifugal fighting style, you know? Like, for example, we have boxing, which is like the juggernaut fighting style, you know, where you're going with a giant shield, like a riot police, you know, you're going with a giant shield, and in the middle of that, you suddenly bring out your baton. Your shield your shield is also your sword, you know, in boxing. So, anyways, guys, it's all about living for an advanced civilization while we're alive. Don't fear that which could be incredible. Like, who knows? Who knows? Maybe if we just ask nicely, human beings suddenly become incredibly peaceful and genius begins to pour out from the minds of people, because that safety level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the most crucial factor. A person who doesn't feel safe, if they come online, they will be savage. We are not echoing what really people are doing. We are echoing what we see in people. You know, we are. It's like we are receiving. Like, you know, they say, like, I gotta. It's like, what impression did you get of that person, right? So what does that mean? That means, in what way did your mind see that person be alive, be a living being? You know. So, anyways, guys, that's the end of the talk. It's anyways, guys, it's 6:05. Anybody who wants to ask a question, let's take it to 6:06 in 1 minute. Anybody ask any question, I'll kind of speed answer it. And, like, I'm gonna kind of time myself, see how quickly I can answer and how well I can answer, and then I'm gonna get out of here. If there's no questions, I'll just, after a minute, just answer the one from John. Okay, guys, let's do this. So, there was a question. What is this? Wouldn't you say that there's a limit to external individual engagement? In other words, we cannot be engaged with everything that we encounter. So, wouldn't you say that there's a limit to external individual engagement? I mean, of course, the limit is in two ways. One, we are not immortal, we die, so we're limited. And the other is a sensory limitation, where the observable universe is just a certain range. Our eyes aren't like seeing everything out of the picture, you know? So, attention is present, but the attention is not present as a shape. The shapes come and go in the attention. So that's what I would say, John, to your question. That See, the thing is, it's like how the person is holding language in their mind. Language for me, it comes and goes, so I don't identify with it too much. I identify as just in my whole moment, pretty much. Ever since I've been doing that, it's like you pretty much my energy levels have always been high. It's strange. It's as if like when you don't fight, when you don't resist thought, when you don't resist something, you can really look at it, you know? And it's like maybe that boxer in the boxing ring lets himself like get a few punches from the opponent just to see how the opponent punches or what strength the opponent has. Do you know? Like that should be considered in boxing commentary, which I think definitely it is. You see, it's like there's I would say that individuality is evocational. So how I feel answering your question right now was totally different how I was feeling like a couple of minutes ago. Do you know what I mean? So it's evocational. So if I'm when you ask the question, when I give the response, it's evoked. It's evoked. That means it's like the school of Athens, how the philosophers were linguistically battling it out. You know. So, anyways, thanks for the question, John. Now, oops, sorry, has a question. You know. That means, are you saying, are you sorry because because you said oops? No, I'm joking. Okay, how can I focus my energy? Well, here's the thing. Before you focus, you gotta see what it is, right? So you can't navigate an airplane, or you can't steer. How would I say it? You can't steer the vehicle if you can't hold the steering wheel. That means if you don't have the strength to turn the steering wheel, so I'm saying, before you want to focus your energy, think of it this way. Think of it like your eyes have opened. You're some being, okay? You're some being that has opened its eyes. Imagine like today was the first day of everything. You know, so you've opened your eyes. Now this brain that you have, this mind that you have, is a processing pattern. It's using certain values to interpret the day. So Mr. Within is saying you gotta let the ripples of the pond settle. Then you'll clearly see in the reflection of the still pond the nature of your mind in the sky and your true nature and all that. So I'm saying you have to find a way where you don't ask a question where deep down you know you never know. Do you know? And not that there's anything wrong with the question. I'm just saying that before we pilot, we want to get a sense of the vehicle. We want to get a sense of the plane, right? So I would say the best thing, OS, to do if you want to focus your energy is to go into just find a moment in nature for 10 minutes, just sit down. 10 minutes, no meditation, nothing, just be there. Just be there. Just be there and watch. And it doesn't matter if you have thoughts or not, but just sit for 10 minutes and let the weight of your body, like as if you're going to sit there for a while, just let your body just sit there. Do you know what I mean? And just watch. Just comfortably sit and just be there with the moment. Okay? And then you're going to get fascinated that your beliefs on what energy is your ego's. It's your ego. So that means you don't own your energy, the ego is directing it. What you think you are is directing it. So when you get to a moment where you're just sitting there with life, you're going to notice some sort of inseparability of how the moment and your mind are the same occurrence. So it's like that question, yo, am I happening in the cosmos, or is the cosmos happening in my mind? You know? What is this secret unique between the dimensions? It's like the multidimensionality of this universe is the Niagara Falls, and in this space-time continuum, we're just walking on this rope, and we're like, why are we walking on this rope? And we're like, okay, we really have no choice. We have to keep going to the end. So I would say the best way to focus. OS, you focus energy by understanding focus is your attention. So I'm just telling you, go and be still and silent enough and let the ripples of your archetypes just settle, and then just watch life, and you'll notice it can even come to a value where you're just being. There's no doing, there is no action to truth. There's no way a drop can, there's no certain way. It's like the drop is in the ocean, it's the ocean. A philosopher may debate, you want to focus your energy, but energy is your focus. You know what I mean? So there's an inseparability again there. So my view on energy, it was a long time, it was just based on objective realm analysis. Then it was like, wait a minute. I got a clue of this when they said like stress is unhealthy. And I was like, what does that mean? That means stress is your mind attempting to see a subject in this world and feeling that subject is unauthorized to enter the external. People are not sad. They just need resources to become advanced human beings. That's what I feel. I feel every human being can find something that their ancestors. That means you got to think about it. Imagine the DNA had this strange genetical memory where the greatest skills of your ancestors were also accessible in your DNA. And imagine you suddenly went towards something and you're like, how am I so good at this? And you realize it was something where it was as if like it's the hidden skill. It's as if another pattern that is similar to a transmigrating soul through the space-time continuum. About being oscillating between in and out of the space-time continuum, a transmigrating soul or field of being. I'm just saying it's like the same way there's a transmigrating soul there. It's like in the same way there is a sort of, it's like like, how can I say it? Like the DNA is like that transmigrating soul. So you are like a lifetime of the DNA soul. If the DNA was seen as a soul, playfully, like you would kind of see you're like one lifetime, one Buddhist incarnate life of your DNA. So the DNA is a dynamism. So I would say what we are at our core is not a static image or a particle. It is actually the realization that it's a process, and the process pretty much at that point becomes either individual or integrative. And when you see the individual has nowhere to go other than look at the integrative, and you see the integrative has access to all, so eventually we will realize that man is designed to not be an individual but to be a grand movement of the species. So we have to design better systems. We need designers. That's what the world needs. We have to design our way towards this advanced civilization. So you focus your energy by finding what's important to you and wondering what attention is and what concentration is, and eventually finding a certain contentment with the reality. That means when you find a contentment with the reality, you finally find access in moving in that reality, so skill unlocks. So you can say skill is really how comfortable you can remain in the most uncomfortable situation. That's skill, I think. That's ultimately echoing in every craft, you know? So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. Thanks for the question, OS. And guys, this Eiffel Tower, like, I'd never seen it in this way. But you know what this shows me? This shows me that the mind of man can reach for the sky. And realize it is it. We're going to become skies, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Much lessons to us.